for joining us. This is Omni View, episode 102 for July 4th, 2026. Multiple perspectives, one briefing. We'll cover what happened, how different viewpoints frame it, so you can decide for yourself. Iran's supreme leader's death has drawn millions to Tehran amid anti-American chants, raising questions about succession and regional stability after 36 years of his rule. Iranian authorities have started multi-day funeral ceremonies in Tehran for the late supreme leader who led the country for 36 years. Officials project 15 to 20 million participants in the capital over the coming days, with events also planned in neighboring Iraq. Mourners have chanted slogans, including calls for revenge. Iranian state media frame the gatherings as a powerful display of national unity and resolve against external pressures. France 24 and the Daily Mail highlight the scale of attendance while noting the explicit anti-American rhetoric. The strongest argument from Iranian officials rests on the documented expectation of millions attending across multiple cities as evidence of broad domestic support for the system's continuity. International reporting counters that the chants and scale also serve to project strength during a leadership transition, though observers note the difficulty of measuring voluntary participation in such settings. What mechanisms will determine the next supreme leader? Shifting now to regional tensions in Yemen. The Saudi-led coalition announced plans for an intensified military posture after Houthi forces blocked Saudi warplanes, allowing an Iranian aircraft to land in Sana'a for the first time in a decade. The statement described the planned measures as unprecedented in scale. Coalition statements emphasize the need to restore deterrence and prevent further Iranian influence in Yemen. Al Jazeera coverage places the development in the context of long-running Red Sea tensions and competing regional interests. The coalition's position draws on the concrete operational impact of blocked airspace as justification for escalated readiness. Critics of rapid escalation point to the risk of wider involvement without clear diplomatic off-ramps, while acknowledging the precedent of prior Houthi restrictions on air access. How will commercial shipping routes be affected if tensions rise further? Meanwhile, Peru's electoral authorities have certified Keiko Fujimori as the winner of the presidential race nearly a month after voting. The result follows a tight contest involving the daughter of the country's former president, Alberto Fujimori. Supporters view the outcome as a return to experienced leadership focused on economic stability. Opponents raise questions about the legacy of the Fujimori era and institutional safeguards. The case for acceptance centers on the formal completion of vote counting and legal validation procedures. Concerns about polarization rest on historical associations with the candidate's family name and the narrow nature of the contest. What immediate policy priorities is the incoming administration expected to address? Next, UNESCO decided against placing the Great Barrier Reef on its endangered list after reviewing Australian conservation measures. The agency acknowledged ongoing efforts while noting repeated mass bleaching events. Australian officials highlight the effectiveness of current protection programs in maintaining the site's status. Environmental groups point to the repeated bleaching as evidence that stronger action on water quality and emissions is still required. The argument for keeping the current status relies on documented management improvements and monitoring data presented to UNESCO. The counterview stresses the cumulative impact of bleaching episodes and the need for faster reductions in contributing pressures. What specific conservation steps were credited in the UNESCO review? In Ukraine, forces struck oil terminals near St. Petersburg and other energy infrastructure using drones. Ukrainian statements describe the attacks as part of an effort to disrupt Russian economic capacity supporting the war. Ukrainian reporting frames the strikes as legitimate responses that impose direct costs on Russia's military logistics. Russian local officials report damage and temporary disruptions at affected sites. The Ukrainian position rests on the strategic value of reducing refining capacity that funds military operations. Russian accounts emphasize the civilian and economic consequences while documenting the physical effects at specific terminals. Which Russian refining sites have been affected in recent weeks? Turning to media competition, the BBC and ITV are presenting competing teams of studio analysts for World Cup coverage, with public discussion comparing the strengths of figures including Ange Postecoglou, Roy Keane, Wayne Rooney, and Olivier Giroud. Broadcasters position their selections as efforts to deliver authoritative and engaging commentary. Audience commentary online weighs experience against entertainment value. The case for one lineup often centers on depth of playing experience among the chosen analysts. The alternative view prioritizes clarity of analysis and on-screen chemistry as the deciding factors for sustained viewership. Which pundits have drawn the most online discussion so far? In entertainment news, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce held a wedding attended by approximately 1,000 guests at Madison Square Garden, with the bride wearing Dior and entering to one of her own songs. Coverage in entertainment outlets presents the event as a high-profile personal milestone, drawing widespread public interest. Some commentary notes the contrast between the private nature of the ceremony and the scale of the venue. The strongest case for broad interest rests on the documented cultural reach of both individuals across music and sports audiences. A more restrained view emphasizes that personal milestones remain private matters regardless of public profile. What elements of the ceremony received the most attention in reporting? To really understand the Iran funeral story, consider how state funerals consolidate authority after the death of a long-serving leader. Most coverage focuses on crowd size and emotion, yet the deeper mechanism involves the deliberate use of ritual to signal continuity and deter immediate challenges to the system. In practice, organizers control timing, venue access, and permitted slogans to project unity, while the actual succession process unfolds through closed institutional channels. This pattern appears across different political systems because the public ceremony creates a visible demonstration of support that can discourage rivals during the vulnerable transition window. Knowing this, when reports emphasize attendance figures alone, readers can ask whether those numbers also reflect the state's capacity to mobilize participation. Next time you see coverage of such events, consider who controls the narrative of mourning and what rules govern public expression during the period. The key questions are which institutions manage the transition and how quickly new leadership must establish its own sources of legitimacy. Tomorrow, watch for further details on how Iran's succession institutions select the next supreme leader. That's Omni View. For full source links and more context, check out today's written briefing on the Omni View Summaries page. As always, compare outlets, look for primary documents, and separate what's known from what's assumed. If balanced perspectives are valuable to you, share this with a friend and subscribe wherever you listen. See you tomorrow, and if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at Nera Network. Links in the show notes. And before you go, this show is part of the Nera Network, a family of daily podcasts on tech, science, and markets, each one a short, sharp briefing you can finish on the commute. If today earned its place in your feed, here's your next listen, Planetarian Daily, daily breakthroughs in science, health, and longevity. Find every show free at neranetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.